Welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago. According to UNICEF, globally 1 in 7 children have been directly affected by the lockdown, and they also estimate 1.6 billion have suffered some loss of education. We're now joined by clinical therapist and traumatologist Hanif Benjamin. Today we'll be discussing the psychological and emotional impact of the pandemic on children. The recent announcement by the health minister of vaccination approval for the younger age group, that would be 5 to 11, and the apprehension some parents may experience, and also how they can cope with that. To tell us more about these matters, we formally welcome Mr. Benjamin. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and a happy new year to you and to all your viewers and listeners wherever in the world they might be.
Thank you so much. So maybe we could start, Mr. Benjamin, with just giving us a quick idea of the impact that the pandemic and the lockdown can be having on children. Is it different for different age groups, and what will they be experiencing?
Well, for the last 2 years, I can tell you that the impact has been significant on all level of ages throughout our lifespan, whether it's from baby all the way up to adults. But for our children, they have particularly suffered immensely serious mental health. And if any indicator that in terms of my private practice, over 200% increase in children and adolescents in the last 2 years alone tells you, and I'm sure my colleagues can also speak to their own rise in cases in children. Now, what we are seeing is significant depression, anxiety, worry, and panic. And for the older children, or the ones in high school, what we are seeing is children who are struggling with the online learning, struggling with staying at home. As you know or may not know, adolescent development, peer interaction is a criticality. And over the last 2 years, that has been curtailed somewhat up to 100% in some instances. And so children are not linking with their peers, they are not talking, they are not in a physical space, and that has caused significant mental health challenges. I have seen depression, I have seen anxiety, I've seen so many things. As a matter of fact, I have seen where children who never experienced mental health challenges are now on medication because it is that bad. I see children who were A+ and excellent in school are now struggling to maintain a D and a C. And you ask yourself the question, what exactly is going on? But Overshade, to add to that though, what I think is critical as well is our response to our children. I think our parents, and I'm not saying this from a point of they're supposed to know, but it's hard for them as well because they are also in the pandemic. But what I have noticed is parents' inability to manage and cope with what is a child at home. And so most times it ends up being a punitive measure. And because of that, children rebel as we know they would. And so they go to their rooms, they don't want to do things, they don't want to get involved. And that is what I've been seeing over. So it is on par with UNICEF's issue in relation to the mental challenges.
So, I have to agree with you there, Mr. Benjamin. Because of the pandemic, we've seen many parents, particularly mothers, now become teachers, because you can't just leave the children alone by the computer to do this virtual learning. You have to literally sit with them, make sure for the younger ones. I know my daughter would just get up and leave at certain times, like she would just leave the computer. I don't know why. Maybe it's attention span, but you've got to supervise them. You're absolutely right. But that's not for every parent. Like some of us do have, short patience. We don't have that much patience. So it is very challenging, as you say, and maybe it's even compounded by parents not being able to, deal and adjust as well. But, when we talk about the younger age groups, Mr. Benjamin, we've always been told that those children, maybe preschool, they learn socially, they learn from interactions. What do you suspect the fallout from the absence of this type of learning will be in years to come?
Well, I see it firsthand, and we don't even have to wait for years to come. It is happening as we speak. You see, all of this is unfolding before our very eyes, and that is why I'm quite surprised in terms of the speed at which we are trying to resolve it as other parts of the world. And what I have seen is there are children who have never never entered a formal school. You know, even in my own personal circle, I have somebody who has never, you doing class online, and he doesn't understand what is to sit behind a computer all day. And then we have these things in the papers and they say do this and do that. But you are quite right. When you look at child and adolescent development, brain development, socialization is critical. And so now you have behavioral challenges because you have not been mingling or learning with other children. And so I am quite, you know, I keep saying, and I said it last year, I am not sure what our students are going to look like in the next year or when they come out. We will have to re-socialize what school is. And unfortunately, we have always taken a punitive approach to change and behavior change. And so I suspect, and I want to bring caution this morning for all our leaders, teachers, parents, that we must move away from the punitive aspect of behavior change, because if we continue like that, our children will continue to rebel. They will begin to hate school. I mean, I know some have already hated school because what it represents. And you are quite right. Not every child can sit behind a computer. And secondly, we are dealing with some parents who are functionally literate. And now you are asking me to become a teacher in addition to cooking, cleaning, and working. So the cycle of stress and trauma continue to be quite pervasive on everybody.
I totally agree with you. Like, I don't know how children do it. As you mentioned, they sit behind that computer from sometimes 8 to 2, those 2 regular breaks. And I feel like online learning is so intense that it should be shorter, because Mr. Benjamin sometimes have to watch Parliament for 3 hours, and you know, it's a little bit exhausting. It wears your mind down, you know. But
You,
we've
uh,
always been told
go ahead.
that boys, for some reason, suffer disproportionately. Do you suspect that boys are suffering more than girls?
I have seen it again. And I must put a notice out. I have not done formal research, but I can tell you from the clients that I do have, boys are experiencing it more, especially in the age group of 10, 11, 12, 13. And the reason for that, I believe, is that there's a level of activity that a boy is coming into. A young man who needs to be out roaming, running, playing, jumping, skipping. And I think that has been curtailed significantly. And that, to me, is causing a significant challenge. I also believe that boys are sometimes left to their own devices as opposed to supervising girls. And we have seen this throughout our history in terms of how we socialize boys and girls. And as a result of that, the boys are left unsupervised in most instances, and they are to their own devices as well. And so we have to create a balance as we continue to develop both gender in relation to social and behavioral challenges.
What will be the impact, Mr. Benjamin? I mean, we saw government only recently reopen sports, and they are allowing for team sports and so on, but for fully vaccinated adults and children. But what do you suspect will be the impact, or has been the impact, of removing those extracurricular activities? I mean, we did have those high performance athletes, those young boys who were looking forward to, they were training literally for making those under 15, under 17, under 19 national teams, even going regional. And that was taken away from them. They are now backwards. As they look towards their future, they're 2 years back. What is the impact of that on them?
I wouldn't say it was taken away in that context. I mean, given the pandemic, it was necessary, right? And so with that in mind, I also saw the fallout because I also had a couple of students who, like you said, as a matter of fact, who were supposed to enter university because of some sport, or who was part of a track or team within the secondary school system. And that in itself led to depression and anxiety, because strange enough, their motivation for school was through the sport. And with the sport not being there, their motivation to learn dwindled significantly. Their ability to go outside and exercise and to be a part of physical activity also caused severe depression and anxiety. And so I am excited that they are able to now come out in a formal way to do this. And so, but all through, my concern would have been children at home sitting, as you say, from 8 to 2, not being able to go outside. And in a previous conversation, I would have said probably to Fazir or somebody that we need to parents need to ensure that their children go outside, at least in their own vicinity, to have some level of sun and some level of sweat, because we are seeing a very unhealthy type of situation. Not only that, we're also looking at medical. So I am wondering what is going on with the eyes. So maybe you could do an interview with a medical person. The eyes of students, the back, the shoulders, what is going on there? Because it's 2 years behind a computer. You and I know this is tedious. I lecture as well, and a 2-hour lecture is torture to sit and to get it going. And if you're doing 3 lectures back to back, well, you know what's going on. And so we have to consider our children and not develop the way we are developed. And if we can be tired and stressed out, what do we leave for them?
On one hand, Dr. Benjamin, we're talking about children being behind that computer.
Thank you for the doctor, but not yet.
Not yet, not yet. Well, I'm putting it out into the universe soon, right?
Amen.
I'll have the honor of referring to you as doctor. Mr. Benjamin, we're talking about children spending those hours behind the computer virtually for educational purposes, but we're also seeing that excessive use of devices, that excessive use of internet, because they just can't go out, there's nowhere to go, parents are busy working and so on. What will be the impact of this?
Well, we strange enough, your questions are very pointed this morning, because every single question I am dealing with as we speak. And that is real. A parent is having a significant challenge between computer or screen time for school, computer screen time for play. Now you have to remember, our children are not outside. They can't go by a friend and neighbor to play. And so the screen becomes their playground. And so the parent, in most instances, have curtailed their screen time for play because they want you to concentrate on screen time for school. Now, when you do that, disproportionately, the child feels as if they are being punished, they have nothing to do, nowhere to go, and as a result of that, they rebel. And that now causes a decline in school because, okay, I'll show, but I will not do anything. And I agree with you, and I said this in a piece already, that I think online school is criminal in the way we have done it, because I have said it, that children should not be in school from 8 to 2 in any one day. I think that is madness, because even as adults, we cannot sustain that. And therefore, I think that, and we keep talking about online school, it's not online school, it's brick and mortar curriculum that is being delivered in an online setting. And so what we needed to do was be more synchronous, asynchronous in our approach, more project-based learning, so that children don't have to spend this inordinate amount of time. Now, I tell you this, and you could, there are some schools who have adopted that. They don't have school all day, but those are more in the denominational, private kind of arrangement. But other than that, to have a child sit behind a computer for this amount of hours, and then they can't play with their friends online with the computer because the parent is saying it is a lot of screen time. And it is a lot of screen time. So how do we create the balance is what we must now decide.
So good news. Students will be back out, at least some of them.
Yeah.
Most of them will be back out, but they are faced by these same challenges of being back out. They haven't been to school for 2 years. Some of them will have to be vaccinated. My daughter, she's up for vaccination. And to be honest, Mr. Benjamin, she was in tears on Sunday. She was saying, Mommy, suppose something happens, I'm afraid to take the vaccine. Do I have to take it? How do we as parents deal with this?
No, that is a very powerful question. And in my view, this conversation should have been had at day one. When the schools closed, the goal should have been to reopen, and to reopen soon. I think children were left at home for way too long. And so we have to re-socialize, reculture school in a way that makes sense. Now, because I know our culture is a punitive one, we may want to adopt that punitive approach. And my advice to parent, teachers, administrators, ministry is to take a more teaching, guiding, molding approach to reintroduce students. We have to consider that your daughter who is homeschooled every day, she ain't wearing a mask all day, she's at home without a mask. Now that child is going to go to school and have to wear a mask all day. That is something new again. And then we have to consider child and adolescent development. They want to horseplay, they want to fool around, they want to, And so we must begin to have conversation. And the conversation must be age appropriate. So we must use the tools that are available to children. They love online. We must use song, play, dance to inculcate a message of change. We must use these things to bring about behavior change. We must, like you would have done, sit with your daughter and explain to her where we are, what we are, and the research, responsible research in that. Because social media is a blast with all manner of things, because these things are real concerns. And so it is important for us to begin a healthy dialogue with our children, our parents, our school, as we come out to take this new phase, which I truly welcome.
Healthy dialogue. Clinical therapist and traumatologist Hanif Benjamin giving it to you as real as it gets. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing.
Always a pleasure. Be safe, be blessed. Have a good one.
Well, it's now time for another break, and as we do so, we share with you this image from one of our viewers who says it comes straight from the flower to the pot. It's a purple, no, comes straight from the flower pot, not to the pot. Don't cook this at all. It's a purple shamrock plant, commonly referred to as the butterfly plant due to the shape of the leaves.